Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyson. I'm one of the registered dietitians here in the inpatient setting at Eisenhower Medical Center.
I'm Elizabeth. I'm also one of the clinical dietitians here at Eisenhower.
And so today we're going to be going over healthy dining out tips as we start to kind of transition back into eating out again as more restaurants are opening up. So where there was previous COVID restrictions of us not being able to go out and dine out, now as we start to loosen up on restrictions, we're getting everyone vaccinated. These are things that we can try to start to do again, and we want to be able to give you guys helpful tips that you can use and be able to take with you and keep in your mind as you go out. So just a brief overview of kind of what we're going to be going over. So in order for you to understand exactly what constitutes a healthy meal, we're going to give some background information as to what exactly is considered to be nutritious. So with that, we're going to be going over the MyPlate Dietary Guidelines, as well as being able to go over some helpful tips in terms of portion sizes, followed by the introduction into eating out. So reviewing some fun facts and kind of how things have changed with COVID, some statistical facts for everyone. And then also going over keywords that can be helpful when we're reading menu items, some tips before you actually go out to be able to dine out, and then followed by different cuisine breakdowns, so including things like breakfast foods, Mexican foods, Chinese foods. We're going to cover it all and kind of help you to choose the best options for each of those, followed by a general summary, and then going into our Q&A. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth, who is going to cover the first half of our presentation for us.
All right, so these are the MyPlate Guidelines, which are based on the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. So the MyPlate Guidelines really focus on making half of your plate at least with fruits and vegetables. So with our fruits, we just want to make sure that we're eating whole fruits, such as bananas, apples, oranges, and we just want to make sure that we're eating the fruit versus having just the juice, as the whole fruit can provide a lot of great nutrients for us. As far as our vegetables, we want to make sure that we are eating a different variety of vegetables. So we always kind of say, eat the rainbow, just so we eat a variety of different colors of vegetables, different types, to make sure that we're getting plenty of the vitamins and nutrients that those can provide. For our grains, it's really important to make sure that we're eating at least half of our grains be whole grains. So whole grains can provide a lot of great nutrients for us, as well as vitamins that we don't necessarily get in refined grains. And then in our protein, it's really important to have a variety of protein, different protein sources like chicken, eggs, tofu, as those can also provide a lot of great nutrients for us in different ways. And then as far as our dairy, we just want to make sure that we're consuming low fat or non-fat dairy sources, as dairy can sometimes provide saturated fat. And so saturated fat, we do really want to limit. So it's really important just try to stick to the low fat or the non-fat dairy sources. And then we'll also kind of talk about some dairy alternatives as well. All right, so looking at our balanced meals and the nutrients that they each provide. So fruits are a great source of fiber, vitamin C, potassium, and folate. They can really help improve our bowel function. So we're having regular bowel movements, which can in turn reduce our cholesterol, reduce our risk of heart disease. Vitamin C can help with wound healing and also help aid in absorption of iron. Some sources here, I'm sure you guys are pretty familiar with them, but we just wanted to list a few. So we have apples, oranges, bananas, strawberries, and kiwi. And moving into our vegetables, these also have potassium, dietary fiber, folate, vitamin A, and vitamin C. Vegetables are great because they're low calorie food. They help improve our bowel function with the fiber content, also help to reduce the cholesterol and reduce the risk for heart disease. And some great examples of vegetables include broccoli, carrots, Brussels sprouts, squash, and tomatoes, and other many different vegetables as well. And then moving into our grains, we have specifically our whole grains provide great source of complex carbohydrates. They also provide dietary fiber and our B vitamins, and then minerals as well, like iron and magnesium. This helps with metabolism, and it helps the body release energy from sources of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And some examples of our whole grains include like oatmeal, brown rice, and then whole wheat bread as well. All right, so more on our balanced meals and the nutrients that they provide. So protein provides a lot of our B vitamins like thiamine, niacin, riboflavin, and pyridoxine. It also provides iron, selenium, zinc, and magnesium. Protein can help build our structures, including muscle, tissues, our bones, cartilage, and they serve as a functional component as far as our hormonal and enzymatic reactions in the body. Great sources of protein include chicken, turkey, tofu, eggs, also nuts and seeds. And then in our dairy category, dairy provides a great source of calcium, vitamin D, phosphorus, vitamin A, our B12, and potassium and choline. This is great for our bone health. So especially during our developmental years, this is going to help us with growing our bones. And as we age, it's going to help prevent osteoporosis or the breakdown of our bone as we age. And some great sources include milk, yogurt, and cheese. And then if you're looking for any alternative dairy sources, if you have lactose intolerance or you just have an aversion to dairy, you can always consume fortified soy milks or yogurts, and these can help provide the same nutrients and same great benefits. And you can also have canned fish like sardines, dark leafy greens, and tofu, and those can also provide the same benefits. All right, so this is from the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. These are guidelines that are revised every 5 years. So the current ones are for 2020 to 2025. Some key dietary principles. So we really just want to focus on having nutrient-dense foods, meaning that the foods provide a great source of nutrients for our bodies versus having calorically dense foods. So we just want to make sure that we're eating a variety of foods from each food group, like we discussed in the MyPlate Guidelines, and also just be mindful of our portion sizes as well. All right, so we're going to talk about portion sizes. So portion sizes can be a little bit difficult sometimes especially when you're in the dining out setting. It's hard to kind of distinguish what a portion size may be. So we thought it might be helpful to kind of go over how to use your hand to distinguish the different portion sizes. So if you guys go ahead and make a fist, you can kind of see the front of your knuckles here. That's going to be equivalent to about a half a cup portion. So this is about 1 serving of pasta. And then if you go ahead and open your hand up, look at the palm of your hand here. I've also heard it referred to as like a deck of cards. So that's equivalent to about 3 ounces of meat or protein. And that's about 1 serving. And if you go ahead and look at your fingertips, so this is going to be equivalent to about 1 teaspoon. So that's 1 teaspoon here. And then if you look at your thumb from the knuckle up to the tip of your thumb, that is going to be equivalent to about 1 tablespoon, and about 2 tablespoons is equivalent to 1 serving of peanut butter. And then if you go ahead and also close your fist again, if you use this size of the closed fist, that's going to be equivalent to 1 cup. All right, so we have a question break. So if you guys want to go ahead and type in the chat, true or false, portion sizes in restaurants and dining out places are the correct serving size. Do you think this is true or false, that portion sizes in restaurants and fast food places are the correct portion sizes?
I have one comment that says false by a long shot. False. False. Okay, good. So it looks like everyone is answering false. So we'll go ahead and advance to the next slide and figure out the answer.
All right, the correct answer is false. So the portion sizes in restaurants and fast food places are not the correct serving size. We'll find out why. All right, so just discussing the evolution of portion sizes. So things have really changed over the years. Our portion sizes are much larger than they used to be. So looking at our timeline, you can kind of see in the 1950s, the portion sizes were much smaller, and compared to now, they are 4 times larger. And with that, we've also had an incline in weight gain as well. And then on the right-hand side, you see the image of the portion distortion. So portion distortion is a term that is referred to a normalization of portion sizes that are much larger than what they should be. If you look on the left-hand side, that is a half-pound cheeseburger. I don't know if you can see the print, but it's a half-pound cheeseburger with a great large portion of fries and ketchup as well. And that's equivalent to about 1,345 calories. And that one on the left has 53 grams of fat. So if we look at the right-hand side, you can see that that's a quarter-pound cheeseburger with about half the amount of fries and less ketchup. That is going to be more of a normal portion size and what one serving should be. So that is about 685 calories, maybe a little less, 685, and then 33 grams of fat. So quite a big difference. All right, so talking about some statistics when it comes to eating out. The average amount of dining out in the last decade has really increased over time, with the exception of the pandemic as things were closed. But in 2019, the average amount of American households spent on dining out was $3,526. And as things are changing, COVID really changed some things. So we may have been doing takeout versus dining in. But now that things are kind of opening up as we're getting vaccinated, we're having masks, I see that the dining out is really making a comeback. All right, so talking about the nutritional profile of meals outside of the home, the portion sizes tend to be much larger than what we should be served or what's considered a usual serving. The sodium content is also much higher. This is to help make things more palatable and make things taste better. We add more sodium, but it is much higher than it should be. The fat content is also much higher. They typically added more saturated fat with things like butter and cream sauces. And the saturated fat is what we try to avoid, but just be mindful of that it is going to be higher in fat content. And it's also more calorically dense, meaning that it has more calories per serving than what is considered a normal serving. So the average for most restaurant meals is at least over 1,000 calories, and that's just for one meal. So just keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to share some tips before you go out. So sometimes people do save their calories, or they try to skip a meal if they know that they're going to be dining out later. We actually advise that you do not do this, and instead try to have a snack before you go out. So just something to kind of hold you over until then. And this will kind of prevent you from overeating or binge eating when you do go out. So some ideas of a snack might be something like fruit with nut butter, like peanut butter or almond butter or yogurt. And you could also do like a whole grain tortilla with turkey and low-fat cheese. And also just make sure that you stay hydrated and drink plenty of water. All right, so some more tips before you go. It can be really helpful if you look at the menu ahead of time, so you can kind of be familiar with the items on the menu. Try to decide what would be the best option for you before you go, and just look for choices that are lower in calories, lower in sodium, and lower in saturated fat. Most restaurants do have their menu online, so you can take a look at those items before you go, and they also provide the nutritional content as well. All right, so more tips before you go. So if you're still unsure of what an item is, if you don't see the ingredients listed, or maybe you don't see the nutritional content listed, or maybe you're still just not seeing something that fits your nutritional goals, just be sure to ask questions. And it's okay to ask your server if there's something that he or she thinks that you can modify or just make a little bit less, you know, take some calories out, make some healthy switches if you can. And most restaurants are willing to accommodate and make changes for you, or maybe just even provide you with the information that you're looking for. All right.
So we have another question break, and it kind of looks like it got a little bit cut off. So from my memory, I'll go ahead and review the answer choice C. But so which of the following choices would be the best option to choose off of a menu? So for answer A, and I realize that now they're all A, but we're going to pretend the first one is A only. So it's going to be broiled chicken with grilled vegetables served over steamed rice. Answer B, salmon with cream-based sauce and served with butter potatoes. Or answer C, a penne pasta casserole with crispy garlic bread. So go ahead and answer in the chat. The first one is going to be A, the second one will be B, and the third one that you can't see is going to be C. Alrighty. So looks like we're getting a lot of A's. Ding, ding, ding. A is the winner. So we'll go ahead and see what exactly our answer is. So yes, okay, and there goes my choice for C. So yes, the correct answer is going to be the broiled chicken with grilled vegetables served over steamed rice. And there's kind of a reason why all of you were led to choose that specific answer choice.
All right, so these are some key words to look at when you're reading a menu. So this might be helpful. If you look at words in the description, you want to choose the ones that say baked, steamed, grilled, fresh, roasted, or broiled. So these are actually going to use less fat in the process, less sodium. So these are going to be your better options. So just keep out for those keywords. And then you want to limit or try to avoid the items that include words in the description, including fried, buttery, crispy, in cream sauce or cheese sauce, or in a casserole, as these tend to be higher in fat, higher in calories, and higher in sodium. All right, so some more keywords when you're reading a menu. So foods that are high in sodium, we want to try to limit those words, those items. And some keywords that you may use to look at when you're reading a menu, items include pickled, smoked, blackened, in broth, in cocktail sauce. Sometimes soy sauce has a lot of sodium as well. And then in tomato base. So these are going to contain more sodium, which we want to try to limit. So just be mindful of those words when you're reading the menu. All right.
Alrighty, and then also what you want to try to aim to do is skip the extras if you can. So we tend to think about when we're eating our meal, we usually count that as our calorie source, but there's also other things that are included alongside our meal that we may not always be aware of or be thinking about. So that includes things like appetizers. Those appetizers can even be sometimes 1,000+ calories. So keeping that in the back of your mind. Also bread baskets, it can be really easy to just grab a handful of breadsticks and continue to munch on those with your dinner, but being mindful of that as well. Also things like chips and salsa, tortillas, as well as fortune cookies. Those are all add-ons that aren't necessarily maybe something that we think about when we're looking at our overall caloric density as well as nutrient density of our meals. And so when you think about making health conscious menu selections, like we said, we want to make sure that we're aware of those key word menu items, but also a lot of restaurants are tending to aim to be more towards the trend of healthy eating. So they will have a specific designated portion of their menu that's going to be aimed towards people who are still trying to be nutrition conscious. So it might be a fit fare menu, a fit menu, a lean menu, or a healthier option. So you want to try to look for that lighter fare option side, as generally these are probably usually in the range of about 500 through maybe 800 calories for a meal menu option. And they're often going to be lower in terms of fat, fewer calories, as well as having more protein and fiber. So all of those things that Elizabeth had talked about on the MyPlate are going to be present within these meal items. And also I talked about skipping the extras, but I also want you to be mindful of is the fact that there's things that you can add too. So we don't necessarily always have to take away when we're eating out, but we can also add different things to our menu options that can make them more satisfying, as well as add the nutritional content that we're looking for. So that can include adding a side of roasted vegetables, adding extra spinach or extra veggies to your meal. You can also aim to try to add a healthy source of fat. So something like an avocado is always a great option to be able to give you not only a good source of healthy fats, but also additional fiber. And then also adding a side of fruit as well. So those tend to be lower in terms of overall calories, but are nutrient dense, which is what we want to try to aim to eat. And then a side note about beverages. So again, with the additional add-ons and extras, things like bread or appetizers, your beverage might not be something that you're considering. So water is always going to be a great option. Water is 0 calories, and we can drink as much of that as we want, and we should probably drink more than we actually do. But if you're not into water, you can try to be able to have your waiter get you some lemon juice that you can also put in it to give it a little bit of flavor without necessarily adding on calories. There is a lot of, or if you think about things as liquid calories, so sometimes if you think about The lemonade that you're ordering with your meal, that maybe be around 150 calories per a cup. And if you had 3 refills, that's already going to be 450 calories on the side of that. So just being mindful of those extra liquid calories. And then some general tips for alcohol. If you do choose to drink when you go out, try to aim to sticking to about 1 drink, equivalent of a serving size of alcohol, and trying to aim to choose better options that don't necessarily have added on extra sugars. So a lot of mixed drinks tend to made with a lot of juices that can increase the sugar concentration and therefore increasing the caloric density. So some better options might be a glass of wine or maybe a vodka seltzer. And then, so just to review, so now I want you to envision the fact that you're going out to your restaurants and now we're thinking about what we're going to order. So when you think about your main dish, always begin to think about your source of protein. And again, aiming to choose those leaner sources of protein. Red meats tend to be higher in terms of overall saturated fat content. So if we do consume that, we want to try to limit that portion of that and try to aim to choose leaner proteins. So things like chicken, keeping in mind your keywords. So having chicken that is grilled or baked is going to be the better option rather than something that's fried or crispy. Those are key words that are going to tell you that they do have a much higher caloric density. Also, fish is a great option. So fish is a really good source of essential fatty acids, particularly omega-3 fatty acids are found within things like salmon, shrimp, and cod. And so those are actually fatty acids that our body needs to be obtained from the diet. So those would be great options as well. Also tofu. So tofu is also a good source of protein, but also a great source of calcium. And then as well as turkey, so tending to be on the leaner side of proteins, as well as beans and legumes too. And then as far as it goes, once you select your protein, we now want to focus on our side choices. So particularly looking at our starches. Like Elizabeth had said, we want to aim to try to make half of our grains whole. So that can include things like brown rice, a baked sweet potato, whole grain pasta, beans, lentils, or a whole grain dinner roll. All of those are going to be able to give you a great source of not only carbohydrates, but also dietary fiber and some of the minerals and vitamins that we do need as well. And then when we think about vegetables, we want to try to aim to pick things that are going to, again, have those key words that we're looking for. So things that are grilled or steamed are always going to be a great choice. And try to be able to avoid things that are going to be in a cream-based sauce or a cheese-based sauce. Most likely those are going to have a very high saturated fat content and can also be calorically dense as well. And so some of our favorites include having corn on the cob, but being mindful of that butter on the side, maybe trying to limit that. Also a fresh side salad, but you can choose to be able to have the dressing on the side. That way you can control how much you're putting on your food, as well as roasted vegetables too. And moving on to dessert. So if you do have a sweet tooth or you're out with your friends and everyone would like to be able to order a dessert option, one thing that's a good choice is if we're all gonna have some dessert, why don't we get that dessert and share it? But keeping in mind, especially now, I guess we don't wanna be using the same fork to eat the same dessert. So maybe portioning it out on different plates for everyone would be helpful, but that also helps to divide up the calorie content of that dessert that you order. We can also choose lower calorie options. So things like frozen yogurt or sherbet, or as well as fresh fruit and whipped cream might be good options. Something that's really helpful too. So if you go to maybe an ice cream shop or a frozen yogurt shop, try to fill up your bowl first with fruit and then do the swirl of the yogurt or the ice cream on top. That way you have the majority of your fruit, of your bowl is going to be from that fruit, so providing you with more nutrients as well. Alrighty, so now we're kind of switching into our different cuisines and giving you some helpful tips in each of the scenarios that you might encounter when you are dining out. So for breakfast, we listed some choices here. So I'm going to go through the differences between them. So when we think about oatmeal or cream of wheat, while both are really good sources of carbohydrate, the oatmeal is going to have a higher proportion of fiber as well as protein. So that would probably be the better choice when faced with those two. We want to, again, choose the whole grain toast versus the white toast because the whole grain toast will be able to provide us with more nutrients and more fiber. An omelet or scrambled eggs versus a fried egg. So again, that keyword, ding, ding, the fried, we want to try to aim to limit that. So going with a scrambled egg would probably be the better option. And you can even go a step further and do something like scrambled egg whites. And then choosing a side of fruit or a side of hash browns, we know that the fruit is going to not only give us a good source of lower carbohydrate options, but also that added nutrient density. So just some key breakfast swaps here. So instead of a fried egg with a side of bacon, maybe try to order a vegetable omelet made with egg whites, and keeping in mind you can always add to that vegetable omelet. So adding more spinach, adding more veggies, vegetables you can kind of consider to be free. They're very low in calories, so aim to load up those vegetables. Also, if you have a buttermilk pancake topped with syrup, try to have a whole grain waffle with a side of fresh fruit might be the better choice there. And then instead for a scone, trying again a side of whole wheat toast. Scones can be really heavily in terms of saturated fat as well as overall calorie concentration. So that brings us to our next question break. And I know it can be a little bit hard to see, so I'm going to try to read it to the best of my ability. So this is a menu item, typical of what you would probably see when you're dining out. So I want to get a good feel of what you guys would order, or if there was any modifications that you would make. So we have here an Oreo waffle, a waffle slam, which includes waffle, eggs, strips of bacon, sausage, and pancake syrup. A hearty breakfast, which is French toast, eggs scrambled with grated cheese, spinach, mushrooms, jumbo sausage, and hash browns. A ultimate omelet, which says it's not for the faint-hearted, so that's a really good descriptive word. A combination of sausage, tomato, onion, cheese, mushrooms, bacon, hash browns, and your choice of white or whole grain toast. A vegetable omelet, a ham and cheese omelet, a bacon and cheese omelet with the option to add avocado, as well as a plain omelet. So if you were presented with this menu choice, what would you guys do? I'm just curious. And you can go ahead and answer in the chat. Veggie omelet, okay. Anyone else? Veggie, hearty. Okay, so yeah, a plain omelet. Okay, good. So it looks like a lot of you are choosing the vegetable omelet or maybe the plain omelet, which are also good choices because we talked about that vegetable omelet is going to be able to have some more nutrients from the vegetables that are added into it as well. And then the plain omelet, it's plain, so it's not going to have a lot of different added factors into it as well. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to jump into a little bit of Mexican cuisine, which happens to be one of my favorites. So the good thing about Mexican food is that most of it is going to be made fresh. So we want to try to aim to choose dishes that are going to be the freshest option. So that may include something like fajitas. We can also think about arroz con pollo, so chicken and rice. That's just going to be having our chicken as our lean source of protein, which can be helpful as well. We also want to choose soft tacos versus hard tacos. So the hard shell of the taco is usually fried in oil. So keeping that in mind that the soft taco is just going to be the tortilla. So that is going to be the better choice. And also a taco salad, but you can choose to ask with it without the shell because the shell is usually fried in oil and that can add on a lot of calories as well. And you can also choose to ask for your sauces, your sour cream, your cheese, or any sort of additional toppings on the side. That way you're in control of how much you're able to put on your food as well. And just some helpful side swaps for your menu options. So instead of for refried beans, you can try to have whole pinto beans or black beans. Instead of flour tortillas, which may be cooked in lard, you want to try to aim to choose corn tortillas. And then also choosing a soup or a salad rather than chips and salsa as an appetizer with those dressings on the side is going to be helpful too. And then as far as it goes for steakhouse dining, so this kind of goes back, steakhouses are really good for us to be able to build meals that we like or that are fitting with our nutrition goals. So you can begin again with starting with that protein source, aiming to pick leaner cuts of meat. So if you do choose to eat red meat, although red meat is higher in saturated fat, leaner sources of those are going to be something like a filet mignon or a top sirloin. Also, again, our leaner sources of protein like our chicken or our fish. And then pair it with your sides. So aiming to have a plain baked potato or sweet potato and asking for those toppings to not be on there or having them on the side. Steamed vegetables are always going to be a good option. And then try to aim to limit those calorically dense side options. So things like your French fries or your mac and cheese, we want to try to aim to choose the better options. And with Chinese cuisine, or maybe it's Thai cuisine or anything along those lines, those are really great as a lot of the main dishes for them are going to be protein and vegetable. And then with the sauces, it depends on what's exactly composed of the sauce, but they can be really great options for individuals that are being conscious of their health decisions. So you want to aim to choose entrees that have a lot of vegetables within them. And then again, opting for those leaner sources of protein. When we think about our starches on the side, you want to aim to choose the brown rice rather than the white rice, as it's going to provide you with more whole grains and more dietary fiber. And then you can also be able to ask for your dishes to be prepared without soy sauce or MSG to avoid the excess sodium content. And then with Italian cuisine, we often think about it being very hearty. So some helpful tips include to choose red sauces that are going to be more tomato-based over white sauces that are usually having a lot of heavy cream and are going to be higher in your saturated fat content. You can also ask for your bread, if you do choose to consume bread with your meal, to be prepared plain. So maybe you want to have that extra crunch of the bread, but we don't want to necessarily commit to the full calories from garlic bread. You can actually ask that they prepare the bread without any of the garlic spread. You can also opt to pass on the breadsticks like we had talked about earlier. And then if you're choosing pizza or maybe you're ordering pizza out, some helpful tips for that would be to aim for the thinner crust, as well as being able to load up that pizza with all of the vegetables that you can, or with all of your favorite vegetables. And then choosing penne pastas or spaghetti pastas, rather than our pastas that tend to be stuffed with things like cheese, like our tortellini or ravioli. Those are going to be better options to choose as well. And then some general tips while you actually are eating. So you've already ordered, your meal comes, and now you're sitting down, whether it's your family or your friends. You want to take time to slow down and really concentrate on listening to your body and looking for the cues that you're feeling full. So sometimes when we're eating out and we're eating really fast, we tend to overconsume because we're not being mindful of our body telling us, oh, I'm starting to get full. Maybe I should slow down and stop eating. So some helpful tips for that are to enjoy the company with the people that you're with, enjoying the time that you're spending with your family or your friends, and really taking time to enjoy the meal. And you might also find that you do feel full much sooner than you would have thought you would. Alrighty, so now we're just going to do a general summary of everything that we had went over. So remember, thinking back to the beginning of this presentation when Elizabeth went over the MyPlate guidelines as well as the dietary guidelines for Americans, we want to keep in mind what a healthy plate actually looks like. So again, aiming to make half of that plate fruits and vegetables, being able to vary the different types of fruits and vegetables that we're getting. So we're provided with an overall greater nutrition profile. Aiming to make 25% of that from your lean sources of protein, so focusing on things like chicken, fish, tofu, beans, legumes as well. And then also aiming to make half of your whole grains whole. That way we can be able to also have that added dietary fiber. And then when it comes to dairy, or we can also think about that group as also being calcium based, you can have your dairy alternatives, so your fortified soy milk, as well as calcium, dark leafy greens, and then lower fat dairy products are going to be good choices. And then always prepare before you go, and being able to remember those keywords that we shared with you that can help you to decipher whether something is going to be more nutritious or whether it's going to be more calorically dense. And always be able to ask questions. So whether that be to the waiter or maybe it be to the cooks themselves on how they're preparing the meal items, you as the consumer need to have all the information available to you for you to be able to make the best decision for yourself. And so that can only come if we ask questions. Alrighty. And so now it's your turn to ask questions, speaking of questions. So if you have any questions, I don't know if you want to drop them in the chat.